Hello, welcome to Record Time. Record Time is a weekly Akashic experience where we explore simple and mysterious themes through the lens of the Akashic Records. My name is Mina, and I'm happy to be here with you. Welcome to friends old and new. And if you're brand new and are not sure what the Akashic Records are, I invite you to check out my website, minaruchi.com, and there's videos there explaining all about what the records are and what an Akashic Record reading is, and there's even some free goodies there waiting for you. So that's a fun place to begin if you are curious. But for right now, if it's safe and accessible, if it would feel good, and if you're not multitasking, I invite you to just take a moment to land wherever you are right now. Maybe that landing process includes closing your eyes, relaxing your shoulders a little bit, softening your jaw if it's clenched. Maybe just indulging in a sigh or a big exhale. Feeling yourself literally land into whatever the point of contact you have between you and the ground. Maybe that's your seat, maybe it's your feet, maybe if you're laying down, it's your back. Just kind of resting into that point of contact. You can continue to land as I tune into whatever the records have to share with us this week. They're sharing. When in doubt, keep it simple. When in doubt, keep it simple. And this phrase is something that one of my teachers, it's like his catchphrase, it's keep it simple. And there's something so versatile and profound about this. You could contemplate it for an entire lifetime, and I'm sure you'd be able to find new depth and new applications for it over the course of an entire lifetime of contemplation. And what they are, so with all of that versatility and profundity, with this phrase that's kind of like encapsulated by this idea and this phrase of keep it simple, the records are kind of like looking at something specific. So we're going to explore a specific case where this notion of keeping it simple can be supportive. So last week we were talking about moving through challenging times or difficult moments in life. And this is also kind of like furthering that exploration of navigating something that's a little bit tricky or a little bit challenging. And it could just be a difficult season. It could be like a specific thing, a situation that's happening right now, or it could be like a longer span of time. And this could be, again, like it could be an external context, or it could just be like a challenging season in your inner world, in your internal emotional landscape. Maybe there's just a season where there's a lot coming up. And so with that kind of context in mind, they're saying, when in doubt, keep it simple. And what they mean by that is when you're in a difficult time, when things externally are getting chaotic, or things internally are getting turbulent or really volatile or emotional or just challenging, if you're working through a lot of stuff and it's hard, it's easy when things become difficult to feel like you need a very complex solution or a complex plan of action, right? As things get more complex and difficult and chaotic in our world, whether that's externally or internally, there's something inside us that feels like, oh, this is getting very complicated. Therefore, I need to be prepared with an equally complex solution or approach to navigating the difficult time, the complex context. And what they're saying is, it's an invitation to dial back, actually. When things are getting complicated, when things are difficult, when there's a lot of complexity or challenge in the external world or the internal world, in those moments, keep it simple. And in that invitation, there's actually so much room for relief. I could almost feel a wave of relief just saying that, of like, oh, wow, what a relief that we don't have to meet complexity with equal complexity. We can meet it intentionally with simplicity, with an even more simplified version of whatever we're doing. So in fact, when things are getting complicated or challenging or complex, can you make it even more simple? Can you make your approach, your way of moving through things, as simple as possible? So it's an invitation to simplify as like a beautiful, valid response to complexity and difficulty. Simplicity is a valid response to complexity and difficulty. And they're reminding us of that because that message is often lost in just our own brain's reaction. And it almost seems, right, like counterintuitive. It seems like weird to purposefully dial it down, simplify what you're doing when things are getting very hectic. And maybe you're in a situation where that really doesn't apply and it wouldn't be appropriate to do that. And I trust your judgment there. I trust your discernment and what would work for you. And this is just something to play with. It's something to experiment with, especially, in the context of like an inner season of difficulty where, again, maybe it's just a lot is coming up. Maybe you're working through a lot of things. And to take this even further, right, this invitation for simplicity, what does that even mean? One way to think about this is to simplify your practice. So maybe the way that you're coping one-to-one with the things outside you or with this context, maybe it does require a complex solution, but your personal practice, the thing that you are doing to stay connected to yourself in the season of difficulty, whether it's internal or external, that can be very simple. So maybe your outward solution approach to the context needs to be complex. Maybe it can actually be simplified, but either way, the deeper invitation here is to inquire and to like kind of look at, to get curious about what your personal practice looks like when things get hard. Do you feel like, things are getting so busy, I need to now meditate for an hour and a half instead of my usual 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is? And they're saying, instead of feeling like, things are getting so hard, in order to calm down, in order to stay connected with myself, in order to be able to stay with myself, tend to myself, I now need to amp it up and make my practice more complex than it was before. And that's the trap that they're actually pointing at and saying, watch out for that. You don't actually have to do that. You don't have to, when things get hard, take your baseline practice and say, okay, now instead of just meditation, I'm going to do meditation. But before I meditate, I'm going to do an hour of yoga. And I'm also going to do some breath work, and I'm going to journal. And then I'm going to pull some tarot cards. And then I'm going to take a cold plunge. And then I'm going to drink a green juice. And then I'm going to be able to start my day. They're saying when things get complicated, can you keep it simple? Can you keep your personal practice especially even more simple than it was? And there's this phrase I think I've heard people say, right? If you don't have time to meditate for 10 minutes, then that means you need to meditate for an hour. And there's almost a tone of like shaming in that. And also just like deep impracticality of like, maybe it would be nice, but if you don't have time for 10 minutes, do you have time for 5? And just like really offering yourself deep permission to keep it simple when things are complicated. When you don't have time for 10 minutes, don't force yourself to do an hour. When you don't have time for 10 minutes, do you have time for 5? Do you have time for 2? Do you have time to just take a couple of deep breaths right now for just a second, 10 seconds? And so this invitation of keep it simple is permission to meet yourself where you're at, to be gentle with yourself, and to see the practice, your personal practice, whatever that might be, as a supportive tool and not a punishment, not one more thing that you have to cross off your to-do list. When things get difficult, the practice should be an anchor, a supportive, bolstering force in your life. It shouldn't be something that is also weighing you down and adding more complexity to your life. So again, it's almost like the practice is this like beacon or pillar of anchored simplicity that can keep you easily connected to yourself in the midst of a difficult season. So that's where I'm going to leave you for today. I hope that makes sense. Personal practice is something that I'm really passionate about, and I love helping people find a practice that works, that is like very simple and very functional. So if that's something that you're curious about, I offer free meditation classes, free nervous system regulation classes, and both of those are great introductions to simple practices that are profoundly supportive. So you can check those out on my website if you're curious. And until next time, I'm wishing you well. Namaste.